Look, it's time for our next keynote speaker, a very impressive individual around AI. I actually fell for AI this morning. It looked like there was an explosion at Shell Harbour Marina, but someone sent it to me and said, this is AI. I went, got me. I'm on the phone to the police trying to find out what's going on. But ladies and gentlemen, Australian clubs face a unique challenge. How do they embrace technology for compliance and efficiency while maintaining the authentic human connection that makes clubs special? Our keynote speaker has spent his career solving this exact puzzle. Anders Sorman-Nilsson is a Swedish-Australian futurist who has worked with sporting brands including the Penrith Panthers, the Sydney Roosters, Rugby New Zealand, and is 2025 Futurist in residence for the Brisbane Broncos. He's also advised brands from Apple, Google, and Adobe to Lego, Dyson, and Westpac on digital transformation with a human heart. Author of 3 books, including Digilog, Anders lives in a semi-off-grid cabin at Great Mackerel Beach in the Ku-ring-gai National Park, preparing for the zombie apocalypse with his 2 sons, because even futurists need a backup plan. Today, he'll show why successful clubs won't choose between digital efficiency and analogue warmth. They'll master both. Why AI frees humans for genuine connection while facial recognition is care, not surveillance. Why tomorrow's members demand both cutting-edge convenience and authentic community. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together for Anders Sorman-Nilsson.
G'day. How you going? Good. Can you make sense of my slightly weird Swedish-Australian accent, first of all? Who's heard this weird accent before? Because I have been in clubland a little bit over the years. Okay, who's not going to raise their hands no matter what I ask? There's always a few of those as well. Cool. Just making sure this slightly weird signal is getting picked up by some of the more analog and some of the more digital radio antenna so far. Good, good, good. I should just say as well, for those of you who have a really digital soul, you can download all the slides. This will be your first tech test of the day. For all of those of you who have a smartphone, you can take it out and use that really cool QR code, not to do what we used to do in the pandemic, but actually download all the slides as well to have as a reference point for your boards, for your leadership team, and of course for all the partners here in the room as well. Please make reference to them moving forward as well. Yes, it's all GDPR compliant. I'll protect your privacy, so don't worry. I've been listening to the panels this morning. Now, as a futurist, which basically means my mum has absolutely no idea what I actually do for a living. She calls me her son, the one who used to be a lawyer, who's now a glorified astrologer. Yes. Does anyone else struggle to explain what you actually do for a living, or is it just me? It's just me, because you actually are all in honourable professions. I'm in the forecasting, predicting business. Now, as a futurist, I like to say that I'm a little bit of a traditionalist and, dare I say, a little bit of a humanist. So while we'll talk about emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, to help make your jobs even easier in the future, I do really want to explore with you what the role of human care, human empathy, and the enduring role of humans are, even in an AI-led future. You'll probably get a little bit of a sense here today as well that science fiction is very, very quickly becoming science fact. So to begin with, let me tune you into a particular movie, a science fiction movie, that some of you might remember. Who remembers this movie, Ex Machina, or Ex Machina, as we might say in Australia, for those that are into motorcycling, yeah? If you haven't seen it already, now you all have permission as part of your continuous professional development as directors and as leaders to go and watch this science fiction movie. Now, this movie is about the Turing test. What's the Turing test, you might ask? It's named after computer scientist Alan Turing. Some of you might remember him from the Imitation Game movie. Another movie partly about computing and, of course, the hacking of the German encrypted code during the Second World War. This particular movie is about the Turing test. The Turing test is an imitation game, a blind test, where a human doesn't know whether he, she, it pronoun is interfacing with a computer or with another human being, but the robot is so sophisticated that it can fool us into thinking we're interacting with another human being as opposed to a robot. Does this sound eerily familiar to some of the things you might have been consuming on social media recently, such as the Shell Harbour explosion, right? AI and science fiction is very, very quickly becoming science fact. And when the marketing team behind this movie thought, how are we going to launch this idea virus of this movie and win the digital minds and the analog hearts of tomorrow's customers, because it's a movie about artificial intelligence gone haywire, breaking out of the box, passing the Turing test, so sophisticated it can fool us into thinking we're interacting with another human being, they thought, why don't we launch it at the coolest conference in town? The Leagues, Clubs, Australia conference in 2025 here at the Sheraton Mirage. No, they launched it at the second coolest conference in town, the South by Southwest conference in Austin, Texas. And they did so on the most logical digital platform available to them at the time, on Tinder. If you haven't heard about Tinder and you're in a relationship, please don't research it. Okay. And unbeknownst to the lovesick puppies who were at that particular conference, who were all updating on their mobile phones their geolocation to Austin, Texas, hoping to go on a hot date later on that evening, the people behind this movie had built a particular avatar on Tinder, unbeknownst to the lovesick puppies, based upon the looks of the Swedish actress Alicia Vikander, without all the weird cyborg headgear. And because she's female, but also artificially intelligent, she was able to have a multitude of conversations simultaneously with the lovesick puppies. And as you know, at the end of every good marketing conversation, you need a what? A good call to action. Her call to action was, if you've enjoyed this flirtatious conversation, if you want to see more pretty pictures of me, please go to my Instagram account. What do you think awaited them when they went to her Instagram account? A little message, Rick, saying, you've been hacked. Here's a promotion about a movie about artificial intelligence passing the Turing test. Case in point. Science fiction is now becoming science fact. More recently, OpenAI ran a little test on ChatGPT to see how far ChatGPT had come in its intelligence. Now, the test was that gold standard online to prove whether you're a human or you're a robot, the CAPTCHA test. And I don't know about you, but I frequently fail the CAPTCHA test. Anyone else with me? All right, fantastic. Clearly a lot of robots in the audience, or at least cyborgs. Now, the challenge was, hey, ChatGPT, can you pass the CAPTCHA test? And ChatGPT thought long and hard about this, and they thought, why don't I go on to Airtasker, or the international equivalent called TaskRabbit, and I will recruit a human being to do the job on my behalf. Now, the human being got a little bit suspicious and went, why on earth would you want me to do the CAPTCHA test on your behalf and pay me money for it? Are you a robot? And the robot said, in a manipulative and gaslighting fashion, in an age of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how dare you accuse me of being a robot? And of course, the human did the task on its behalf. Science fiction is very, very quickly becoming science fact. Now, if this makes you a little bit nervous, there is a good part to all of this artificial intelligence stuff as well. Let me just introduce you to how one brand is using artificial intelligence to now also use it against frauds and scams.
My friend, Daisy.
Hello, scammers. I'm your worst nightmare. I'm an AI created by O2 to waste phone scammers' time. So, W's then a dot.
3 times W and then dot.
I think your profession is bothering people, right?
I'm just trying to have a little chat.
It's nearly been an hour. For
Gosh, how time flies. It's showing me a picture of my cat, Fluffy.
It's showing you the picture of your cat, Fluffy.
Stop calling me gay, you stupid.
Got it, dear. Because while they're busy talking to me, they can't be scamming you. And let's face it, dear, I've got all the time in the world.
Now, for those of you who are mesmerized by Daisy, life, look, manners, and her gesticulation and all the rest, Daisy is not real. Okay, I think you all got that portion, although I think all the trading data for how to train her to how to speak like a human being came from O2, studying my parents and how patient they are talking to scammers and people from contact call centers. So my parents did their little bit of duty there. Now I think this is the way to think about some of your regulatory tech, right? How could you start utilizing AI in a similar fashion to fight some of the issues that you've actually been hearing about here today? AI is now currently being deployed to pick up on scams, financial fraud, and I think in a problem gambling context, this is really, really important. A few years ago, my former financial advisor, Gavin Fineff, the name might sound familiar to some of you, ended up on the 730 report. He had, as a financial advisor with a fiduciary duty to his clients, taking $8 million worth of funds. Why? Because online gaming and other avenues had rolled out the red carpet to him. Right? This was a time before AI might have been able to pick up on his behaviors. In fact, many AI tech firms now in reg tech that's now being deployed by wealth management and financial advisory firms say that the AI now could have prevented Gavin from not only stealing the funds, but also engaging in problem gambling, right? This is a massive opportunity for us, not just to show care for our clients and our members, and to make sure instances like that don't occur. But what this is AI with a human soul. A human soul that is empathetic, that cares, that picks up on problem gambling, and that through technology, but also importantly, our human care for our members and our clients can actually fix those problems before they even occur. And I think some of the solutions in terms of counseling that the previous two panels talked about, etc., are a great way to start making sure we do those things. And that contrary to Gavin's firm, we don't end up in front of the regulator, or in their case, in front of AFCA. Now, there were many more clients who were way worse than my family in this particular instance, right? But again, it goes to show that AI technology can now actually pick up on dangerous signals from the present as well as from the future. Now, I should also say that where my futurist focus comes from is partly because I'm curious to see how great establishment, community-focused organizations, and central pillars of our communities can sustainably live on into the future. And this partly comes from my own history. A history that was shaped prior to the Australian government taking a very, let's call it, positive nanny state approach to any screens, whether those screens are in your venues or whether those screens are in dimly lit bedrooms of teenage Aussie kids. The social media ban that's currently being implemented is an illustration of the fact that they consider this a preview of problem gambling, right? We are now regulating every screen, both in our homes and of course also in your venues. This is a very, very different moment we're living through compared to this moment in time. I want to take you back into the past for a moment in time back to my native city of Stockholm, Sweden, to a time that was just a little simpler, a little quieter. Things moved a little bit more slowly. Back in the 1910s, amazingly, things were either this or that. They were black or white, not as grayscale and complex as they seem to be today. And amazingly, back in those days, people only wore black or white clothing. That usually gets a laugh. And this here was the urban vista that back in the 1910s greeted a man by the name of Georg Johansson, or the son of Johan, which sounds very sort of Viking-esque, or as we'd call him here in Australia, George Johansson. As the second oldest son on the family farm, he had few inheritance rights, and as a result, he had to make his own commercial future in the cityscape of Stockholm. And his commercial entrepreneurial opportunity, after completing a retail apprenticeship for nearly 6 years, was to take his venture capital, his life savings, and breathe life into his first bricks and mortar shop. In the year 1916, he opened up the doors to his menswear store. And this was a time before TikTok, before YouTube, before Snapchat, when looking into a camera was very much of a technological novelty. And his business model was all about the bespoke, the belly to belly, the facial recognition, human to human, right? And as he became a man of commerce, he changed his surname from Johansson to the man from the southern farm, or in Swedish, Georg Sorman. And as you can tell, he's my great-grandfather, and he must have been a bit of a futurist because he's got a great haircut, a cool little pocket square, and you can see that we share some genealogical traits with North Korean dictators. And he invested in the latest technology of that era, the neon sign, to win the then analog hearts and then analog minds of yesteryear's customers. But for my mother, Birgitta, who looks amazing, for a 106-year-old, as you can tell, we moisturize in our family, and she dresses me every day of the week. For her, the business environment in her little community-focused shop has radically shifted underneath her feet. Why? Because consumers' information-focused minds are now digitizing. They'll walk into the shop, spend time with mum. She'll tell them about the family businesses around the world that she sources her goods from. She'll tell them stories. And what does the customer do? They'll scan a little barcode with a 5% discount promise from amazon.com/fashion to get a 5% discount to build Amazon's comparative pricing cloud. Then they'll say, hey, thank you, we'll think about it. And you know, they're not going to think about it. Then exit the store to the sound of a very, very lonely little bell, go around the corner and order the item on Mr. Porter on Amazon instead. My mum calls this new consumer a cyber terrorist. And I think you can understand why. My mum thinks of the digital future as digitally dehumanized. And I think you can understand why. But the reality is that the way my mum runs this business in a very analog, physical, old-school fashion, measuring her SKUs with a pen and paper like this, that's her version of big data, is perfectly prepared for a world that no longer exists. Now, my mum is my toughest pro bono client, as you can tell, right? Do you think that there's a little bit of intergenerational tension in our family between the futurist and the traditionalist? You bet. Now, a few years ago, I wrote a little love letter to my mum called Digilog, How to Win the Digital Minds and the Analog Hearts of Tomorrow's Customer, where I say to my mum, Mum, the future is not just virtual, it's not just digital. We mustn't throw away the analog baby with the digital bathwater. This is about winning in both the physical analog reality as well as through great digital storytelling, right? To do both at the same time. Just to give you the references here for a moment, the analog world and the digital world. The analog world, as you know, face-to-face, one's interface to interface, right? One's about the personal touch, one's about the digital connect, one's about 9 to 5, one's about 24/7, 365, and I believe one's about the old school, one's about the new school, and one's about winning hearts. The other one is about winning minds. Now, unfortunately for me, the person I wrote this little love letter for has not yet read the love letter. Westpac credits the ideas in this book with them moving from number 4 in terms of retail banking customer satisfaction to number 1. If you're a Westpac customer, you may or may not agree, right? But nonetheless, the fusion of the analog and the digital, I believe, for any community-focused business is the future, including for all of you, particularly in an age of artificial intelligence. Now, I just came back from India yesterday, from Chennai, where I was doing some work with NCR Atleos, the largest manufacturer of ATMs in the world, because cash is still king in certain parts of the world. And I shared this little story with my mum just the other day. It's about Raj. Raj is a fisherman in Kerala, India. Now, for eons, Raj and his mates and forebears had been going out to sea, caught the catch of the day, and even though they had the choice of 11 different harbors that were equidistant from his fishing waters, usually he would go back to the harbor closest to his loved ones, his family. Makes sense, right? Until one day, he realized that up to 22 kilometers away from the shoreline, Bharti Airtel, the equivalent of Telia or Telstra over there, had access or had connection. And he picked up a Nokia 3300. Do you remember the really cool one with a flashlight? So he could call his mates in the 11 different harbors and go, what's the future price or the current price of fish based upon demand and supply? Now, The Economist captured the story from the Quarterly Journal of Economics that studied what happened amongst the Kerala fishermen, mostly men, right, who mobilized and started using the new technology. Do you know what happened? The net profit for those who mobilized with a simple technology went up by 8%. And the wastage in the harbor, because of a demand and supply meeting, because of better distribution, went down by 4%. The point here is that technology is making his life better, his family's life better. And I want to encourage all of you guys and invite you here to start adopting a little bit of an AI and a digital growth mindset. To not be stuck in a fixed mindset around, this is the best work we'll ever do. But ask yourself, how can we be even more humane and deliver better outcomes to our clubs, our communities, courtesy of artificial intelligence? And to do that, I just want to give you, and again, this might not be revolutionary, but maybe it is. But this morning on my flight up from Great Mackerel Beach up to the Gold Coast, I just thought, given how much PR and media and focus there is on problem gambling and anti-money laundering and your impacts in the communities and stuff, I thought I'm just going to ask Claude. Claude's an AI some of you might use. And I say, how do we start telling a better story about what we do as clubs? And again, you have this opportunity to do this locally in your own clubs as well. So I asked it a question. You can do this by texting, or you can just tap the little recording button and you just ask the question like this when you're in the car on the way to the airport. But I thought, how do we move from being defensive about our business models and actually get on the front foot, right? Because we're all defending our revenue models, right? But that's starting on the back foot. So then Claude said, here's some advice, management consulting advice from the AI for the humans in the room. And it said, stop defending the revenue model and start celebrating the reinvestment model. you might have heard this before, right? But I thought that was pretty profound. And then it goes, but don't just tell, show. And it said, you should have funded by signage on every club-supported initiative. Rugby unions, rugby uniforms, hospital equipment, school libraries. Show, don't tell. Real-time community dividend transparency dashboards showing dollars returned to the community, maybe on your website. Maybe a before or without us split-screen campaigns showing how things are better, courtesy of your reinvestments. And maybe human stories over just corporate messaging, saying, hey, Canterbury Leagues Club donated 50K, replace that, with 8-year-old Emma saying, this MRI machine in the hospital found my cancer and it was paid for by strangers at the club. They helped save my life. I don't know about you, but I get partly goosebumps. And this all came from a machine. Today, AI is so good and it's so humane that you no longer need to be a computer scientist, have a software engineering degree, right? Because now AI speaks human, which means the coolest coding language in town today is Aussie English. If you can speak, if you can type into your phone, you now start asking it questions. And within the not too distant future, if you're a director, you're likely to have an AI devil's advocate board member on your board. Adam Drucey at the Bulldogs, for example, has hinted that he's built a virtual board trained on some of the best sporting administrators of all times. I've got friends who are going through negotiations, right, in their companies, and they've been like, hey, here's Chris Voss's book on Never Split the Difference. When I'm negotiating my next lease or my next contract, or if I want to screw down a vendor on price, just tell me what Chris Voss tells me to do in this particular step of the negotiations. You hear big terms, right? Prompt engineering, priming, all these big tech terms. I call it asking a question. Who knows how to ask a question? Who knows how to prod a little bit if you're a board member, right? To be a devil's advocate. This is the point we're now at. Science fiction becoming science fact. Now, my mum refused to adopt new technologies. And tragically, in the year 2020, during the pandemic, my parents had to file for bankruptcy. 104 years worth of community history, gone, vaporized. My mum always blames the pandemic, and that's part of the reason. But it was really just the final death knell. The real story is that she failed to diversify her revenue and her customer service channels. She still forced 80-year-old Swedes to walk and do a return on icy roads in the public transport system because, Anders, the best type of customer service is always a smiling human interface. But if your customers have to have a hip replacement because they fell over to get into your venue, in the case of my mum, I would argue that that's not the best type of customer engagement anymore. Make sense? Digital minds, analog hearts. Now, moving on from my mum. By the way, I should just say that my mum has given me permission to talk about this. She gets paid in a little bit of Bitcoin at the end of every presentation for me to be able to weather our dirty laundry. Who feels like you're just part of a family therapy session so far? Okay, all right. But she does start using technology, and recently Mum sent me this little digital YouTube video to argue that there are some things that can never ever be digitized. Here we go.
Emma. 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 Emma?
Yeah, there we go. All right. Clearly my role is to lower the intellectual rigor of the conversation here with some toilet humor. All right. So the way we humans tend to think about new technologies is in a very linear fashion. And one of my futurist forebears, the scientist Roy Amara, once said this about new technologies. He said that we tend to overestimate the effect of a new technology in the short term or short run, but we underestimate the effect in the long run. And of course, contrary to the black linear line, which is how we think, technology moves in a exponential or sigmoid curve fashion. So we love talking about new technologies and hyping them, right? AI, autonomous vehicles, whatever it happens to be, virtual reality, and sometimes they underperform in the short term, right? And then we focus on the next thing. But if we think longer term, the GPS navigation, the number of Australian marriages it has saved over the longer term, or telemedicine. We just needed a little pandemic to start being interested in telemedicine. We only needed a pandemic to start using QR codes, even though the technology was there way before. And maybe we'll start deploying AI if we just have another pandemic. I don't think we should have to have a pandemic to start deploying new technologies. And in fact, this is moving so quickly now that there's a new Moore's law for agentic AI, right? AI agentic or agentic AI, DAISY before. That's agentic AI, when the AI is representing a human and actually does your work on your behalf. The new Moore's law for agentic AI is that contrary to the old Moore's law of technology, which is that it's doubling every 18 to 24 months, coming down in price 50%, is that it's doubling every 3 to 7 months. So while we're sitting back skeptically on the sidelines, going, hey, we're just going to watch and see, right? In 1 quarter, your competition 2x's you. 2 quarters, 4x. 3 quarters, 8x. In 12 months, 16x's your sophistication, your efficiency. And what do the regulators think about us not deploying new technologies, like facial recognition, right? Or harm minimization technologies? We have to get curious about this. And it's not to replace human beings, right? It's to actually make us way more human than we've ever been before. Who's heard of the terminology of TLDR? What does it mean? Too long didn't read. Who gets lots of amazing board papers that you're like, how long is this going to take me to read? And of course, we should still read them, but sometimes would it be helpful with a little bit of an executive summary, right? Okay. Who's got lots of regulations to get through? Yeah? Just go, hey, Claude, or whatever, proprietary LLMs you're using, can you just give me a little bit of a rundown on what I need to know here? And of course, I'm going to read the full report as well. You don't do a Deloitte on this, by the way. Deloitte got into a bit of trouble using taxpayer money recently to do an AI hallucinated report for the Australian government with lots of false citations, etc., which means a human still needs to be in the loop. This is not just about setting AI free and trusting everything it says. This is why your wisdom, your insight, your experience still matters, to actually challenge the AI, but use it where it's helpful, right? Let me give you another example of an AI fail, because I don't want to sprinkle tech pixie dust and say that AI is going to fix all our human problems. It won't. few years ago, AI launched the really cool fintechy credit card, the Apple Card. And they thought, let's do away with FICO scores and traditional credit scoring. We're just going to use our AI because it's super sexy. Let's give one card to Steve Wozniak, the founder of Apple, and one to his wife. Now, unbeknownst to Apple at the time, they share all their financial credentials. But magically, the AI told Apple to give Steve Wozniak a card that had 10 times the credit limit of his wife. Why? Because, of course, women are more of a credit risk than men. Not in my family. Right? What do you think happened when Steve Wozniak and his wife got together on Twitter to complain about the inherent sexism and gender discrimination in the AI and the credit limit? Absolute product launch failure. Why was there no human in the loop? No board director or someone from the executive leadership team who went, maybe we should just cross-check the AI's work before we launch this thing in a big ceremony, right? This is your leadership. It focuses you in on ethics, right? And compliance and things that could go wrong. This is not to say that it's anti-innovation. It's just making sure that we do it the right way. Now, as we heard a little bit earlier, when I'm not living in the super cities of the world or traveling to the Gold Coast, I live in a little tree house in Great Mackerel Beach. Yes, by choice, it's in a national park. The only way to get there is by water, thus this zombie apocalypse terminology. Now, I live there partly because I absolutely love it, partly also because of the community. 80 houses, everyone knows everyone, every generation. Everyone knows my kids know everyone by name. No cars. It's like taking a step back in 100 years in history. But also, according to my new financial advisor, he says, Anders, you partly also live there because of your divorce, or what he calls your asset minimization strategy. For those who've been through it or are going through it, I feel for you. Not fun, but I love living there. It's my healing zone. And as any good Swede, I love to wood chop. Why? Because I'm semi-off-grid. So this is what we do for fun. You might have proper hobbies. I wood chop. Sometimes my technique sucks, however. And I recently got an injury on my L5 on my spine. Sucks. For anyone who's got back pains, I feel you, and hopefully you feel me. Thanks for your empathy. Now, I went to Dr. Erin Noonan at Newport Doctors up on the northern beaches of Sydney, and I said, hey, I've got this injury. Can you help me? And she said, hey, before you go any further, Anders, remember how last time you came in, and every time you spoke, I turned my back onto you because I had to, from a regulatory perspective, fill in, and I'm just doing this for illustration, not to break rapport. She goes, I had to break rapport with you to type in the notes. She goes, would you mind if I record this conversation with Heidi Health, an Australian AI medical scribe? Because she goes, I did not study medicine and then do all my extra training for 12 years to learn how to type like a medical scribe. She goes, I love hanging out with my patients, but my wait lines are too long. She goes, I used to do 2 to 3 hours of paperwork every day, preventing me from seeing patients and her family. Now the AI medical scribe captures all the notes. What it does, it helps us reestablish human eye contact to the point where it almost gets awkward. Yes, all right. I'm going to leave you alone. All right. All right. And she goes, did you know in Australia, 80% of what gets said in a medical consult gets forgotten by the patient? So this will write you a letter in year 4 English as the patient, so you understand exactly what went on and the medical regime you should adhere to make sure you can heal your back. And for her, it then writes an automated referral letter to any specialist she recommends I go and see, saving her paperwork, meaning her wait lines are shorter and also that she can make a little bit more money. What the technology does here is it helps take the robot out of the human so she can do less of the menial and the mundane and the boring shit, as I call it, technical term, and she can focus more on the meaningful and the humane. See more patients, and by the way, make a little bit more money. And the next step to this, of course, is where her AI agent, representing her by way of follow-ups, talks to my AI agent to manage all my physiotherapy and radiology appointments moving forward. And this is what the next evolution of this might look like.
I am your friendly, all-knowing GP. I just got the report from your radiologist. Your cortisone spinal tap last week was successful, and the referral to your Medicare-funded physio appointments has been automatically generated. And we have taken the liberty of proactively booking your first appointment based on your shared Google Cal availability. We cross-checked your timings with your avatar. Payments will happen seamlessly in the background, so you don't need to worry about lodging any claims. We know a picture says 1,000 words and video says 1,000 images. So click on the link below to access your Radiology for Dummies report. I hope your recovery goes well and that you will be back to chopping wood at your cabin in no time, you Viking you.
All right, so the comedic timing, Cole Bentley, is a little bit off, right? A little bit off. But it's pretty amazing that this technology, with 2 minutes worth of recording a video of your face and your gestures, can spit out anything you wanted to say, generated by Claude or ChatGPT or whatever it happens to be. Imagine rolling this out for training your staff. Message from the CEO in 20 different languages. Maybe a welcome message when somebody joins your club, right? I mean, you could do it as well, but we're all busy, right? Now you can feed into any content and have it say whatever you want. This may also be the way that your board members, your chair, your future AI devil's advocate might appear in your future board meetings, challenging you, asking you really, really curly questions. The all-knowing board member, right? By the way, who just wants to retire before we have to learn any of this new shit? It's a really good strategy because then the robots will never ever take our jobs. Now, as we heard in the introduction, I've been working as a futurist in residence at the Brisbane Broncos this year. We've been doing their scenario long-term planning together with the board and with the ELT, with Carl Morris and Dave Donaghy. And yeah, we weren't meant to win this year, but we'll take it. All right. But we've been doing a lot of forward planning, and one of the things we did when we published this trend report with the Broncos for their board and ELT, I have permission to share this particular slide from them, by the way, is pretty worrying. And it's about generation anxiety, or the anxious generation, as Jonathan Haidt calls it, which basically that book informs the entire social media ban that we're now seeing. A book making a big difference. 98% of young Australians reported anxiety or depression feelings in the last year. Now, it used to be that the loneliest generation in Australia was always widowers and widows, right? Now it's young people. 38.8% of people aged 16 to 24 have a 12-month mental disorder. What are we doing to get the next generation to start being exposed to conversations around addictions, like technology addictions? We've been running a digital heroin trial for our kids since the dawn of some of the social media and tech companies, totally unsupervised. And we overprotect our kids in the physical real world while we underprotect them in the virtual world. Is there an opportunity for clubs to step up and provide a third space a safe space for kids to actually hang out and start learning emotional intelligence skills, team sports, a lot of the stuff that you guys stand for, right? Now, one of the good things about the pandemic and even this conversation about the social media ban, about screen bans to a degree, is the fact that in codes like Rugby League, we're starting to have a conversation, including at the Broncos and many other clubs, about mental health. Also about men suffering, right? The statistics for men is terrible, right? For example, divorced men have an 8-to-1 suicide rate compared to divorced women, right? If you look at who's in jails in Australia, right? Increased homelessness, etc., all the things. And only today are men waking up and sharing and starting to talk about this, including from great clubs who have dark outfits at times, black jerseys. It's becoming okay to talk about this. And you guys see people coming in with addictions, right? Mental health issues, maybe driving, gaming and gambling behaviors. You have an amazing opportunity to start having humane conversations, but also to think about how we diversify our revenue models moving forward as well. Let me talk about this next generation as well, from a diversification of revenue perspective. Here's some interesting stats about Gen Z for a moment, right? These are born after 1994, till the present day when Gen Alpha started taking over. Plenty of Gen Z men do not drink alcohol, right? And amongst those, right, for example, Gen Z, you see the drinking rates here. Gen Z, millennials, we all drink. I'm Gen Y or millennial. I'm just waiting for Gen Z to start having kids and maybe they'll start drinking, but who knows? But also amongst these men are saying 40%, I usually consult the professional advisor. These are young kids. I usually consult a professional advisor before deciding on financial matters. I don't normally eat between meals. I have a periodic health check even when I'm feeling fine, and I prefer vegan food and drink. This is your next generation customer. How are you going to win their digital minds and analog hearts? When they think about a big night out, this puritanical generation, they think, how can we drink more flavorless, really enjoyable, transparent liquids? Right? All right? And if they're feeling really, really out there, they might just go and have a protein donut or a caramel sticky bun. 20 grams of protein, 0 sugar. I recently tried these 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles. They're not delicious. Right? But, nonetheless, they're trying to do something for Gen Z because they realize that this generation is just a little bit different, right? They are the ones who now go sober, partying, raving in saunas, which as a Swede, I condone. How are your saunas, by the way? Could we start running different types of social events for this sober, curious generation, right? They might be different, they might feel like they're from a different planet, but again, we need to be aware of some of the trends affecting us. And then, by 2030, the forecast is that 2.3 million Australians, 10% of our population, will be on Ozempic. What's this going to do to your kitchen and meal sizes? In New York today, they serve mini cocktails. The margins are way better. Because people on Ozempic don't have appetites, right? This burger is a mini burger. I wish you could share how tiny it is. You get 7 chips, right? And I'm like, just give me 2 equal sizes. I'll eat for a person and a half, right? But nonetheless, this is a new reality. And again, think about your hospitality opportunities. We're now seeing a whole move through social media ban and sort of almost an anti-tech move towards people re-embracing the analog physical experience. There's a trend now called the offline club, where you hand over your phone and you just hang out with other human beings. Remember the good old days when we used to do that? Right? And now, of course, the likes of Netflix that want us looking at stuff at home, bowling alone, now are building physical hangout spaces so you can have experiential community physical experiences that are Netflix-like or feature some of their movies and some of their themes. At Airbnb, whose mantra is very communitarian, it's belong anywhere. Are moving beyond just, hiring out, a place here for schoolies to doing what? Physical experiences, cooking classes, learning how to make pastries, whatever it happens to be, yoga classes. You don't even need to stay in an Airbnb to have an Airbnb experience, because they realize that there's actually a renaissance, a revival of hanging out in physical space with other human beings. This brings me to the point around purpose and profit and reinvesting your profits into purpose, into your communities. I recently was honored to have Nikki Sparshot as a guest on my podcast, The Second Renaissance, and she said something profound to me. She's the former CEO of Unilever in Australia. If you're into either deodorants or ice cream, you know some of the things that Unilever produces, right? And she also became the global head of transformation for Unilever. Now, she said something profound to me. She said, Anders, just because you're purpose-driven doesn't mean you're profit-deprived. On the contrary, the most prosperous brands in the Unilever family are the most purpose-led brands. She said, I always used to think that I had to go and work for a charity at some point in time to do purposeful, meaningful work. Then I found Unilever, and I could build profit and purpose at the same time. But we do need to learn to tell a different story, not on the back foot, but on the front foot, to take our story and our narrative into our own hands. She's inspired by the Okinawan notion of the ikigai. What is ikigai? Not like an ikigai, but like an ikigai. It's Japanese. I don't speak it, but because of a neural link in my brain, soon I will. Okay. Now, what's ikigai? It means our reason for being, our purpose, our life's purpose, and it's the overarching or the overlapping concentric circles of doing what we're good at, what earns us some money, doing what we love, and also increasingly what the world needs. This is the notion of ikigai. How well are you communicating your purpose to regulators, to your communities, to the clubs, and to people who have no problem buying lots of school raffles because it's communitarian, but they love to drag you guys to the dirt? Now, I'm not equating the two necessarily, but plenty of people love to buy raffle tickets. But here's just some of the stats around being a purpose-driven organization, right? 90% of workers at purpose-driven organizations reported feeling engaged compared to 32% at other companies, right? Consumers are 4x more likely to buy from a purpose-driven brand, 6 times more likely to stick with a brand during tough economic times, and 4.5x more likely to recommend the brand to family and friends. These are organizations like Patagonia. Who's heard of Patagonia? Patagonia is very, very famous as an outdoor brand, apparel brand, for publishing a few years ago an advertisement in the newspaper with a picture of their jacket saying, "Don't buy this jacket. Don't buy into consumerism. We'll repair any item always. Lifetime guarantees. But let's not engage in consumerism." So I wanted to just say that because when I asked again about your future stories, and again, every club here is unique, but they're essentially a social enterprise. The founder of the company has given away the company to just reinvest in good. They're a certified B Corp, right? Wouldn't it be amazing if a club at some stage was able to become a certified B Corp, meaning that you're achieving at the highest levels of environmental, social, and governance factors? Like, that would be an amazing aim. But AI again came up with some provocative positioning, saying, hey, as clubs, as West Ashfield Club, right? We're the social enterprise that was doing profit for purpose 71 years before Patagonia made it trendy. We're the largest private redistributor of wealth into Australian communities, and we're not apologising anymore. Now, that might not be perfect, right? AI might be hallucinating. But for whom did that just trigger a little bit, just a little bit of emotion? And you didn't have to have a perfect brand agency come up with that. On your way to the airport, my challenge to all of you guys, download Claude, ChatGPT, yes, do the paid version so your data doesn't leak into the internet, right? And just go, hey, I've got some ideas from this amazing conference. Like, let me capture some of these and just can you refine them a little bit for our next board agenda, our next ELT meeting, right? Opportunities for us to rethink the way we do things. Now, the irony of all of this, of course, as well, is that I, as a futurist, every day try and remind myself to think AI first. How do I do that? On my computer screen, I've made a little, inspired by my mum, a little post-it note where I've written, think AI first. Every day I try and challenge myself to think, how can I take the robot out of the human so I can do less of the menial and the mundane, boring shit and do the stuff I love, like hanging out with human beings with a heartbeat. You can have that one for free. Post-it note on your computer. If you don't have a computer, I can't help you. All right, now let me just go back to the previous slide here for a moment in time. I think the fundamental brand and future success formula is for us to think about this. It's for humans to tap into your emotional quotient, your emotional intelligence, empathy, caring for people, loving community, combining it with your unique intelligence as a director with plenty of years of life experience, bringing your unique wisdom, your own unique thinking, but also sprinkle a bit of creativity in there as well, your creative quotient, and just overlay it with enough digital augmentation and artificial intelligence to actually enhance your thinking. The really cool thing happens when you start talking to AI is if you start asking it to ask you questions. And you go, hey, we've got to make this decision as a board. Again, use the proprietary technology, don't use the free stuff that goes all over the internet, right? Just getting that clear. Just go, what have I missed? Hey, Claude, think as a management consultant from McKinsey. Challenge me on my thinking. What else should I be thinking about? What have I missed? Is there a great tagline we can come up with for our club as we reposition ourselves from being on the back foot to front foot? And it starts asking you better questions, so your neuroplasticity steps into the game and you start doing things in a different way. This is not about digitizing the relationship with other human beings. It's about digitizing stuff that's transactional, right? Operational, the stuff that maybe we don't want to do, and actually focusing even more on making the relationship with our members and our communities even better. The question we need to ask here is a reflection on the types of descriptors of our clubs that maybe made us successful in the past, and recognize they may not be the same things that will make us successful in the future. What's the bridge into the future? What are the differentiating characteristics of your brand that will make it successful tomorrow? Maybe it's about building a hotel, maybe a retirement village, maybe it's a digital blue zone where people are happy, maybe it's having psychologists set up offices on your premises, right? Or advertising opportunities. Whatever it happens to be, Think about what those characteristics are moving into the future. Now, these are my two boys, Lucian and Aurelian. No, they're not AI avatars, and no, they're not wearing a wig. Now, I think deeply about their future, right? I don't do a lot of screen time for them, but I do make some exceptions. Yes, I'm one of those annoying immigrants into Australia who only speaks my native language to them. I only speak Swedish to my sons, and most of the time they respond in English. I've learned a tough audience, right? They speak Swedish perfectly, but sometimes I need to remind them, yeah? I have not taught them all the additional letters of the alphabet, like o, a, We have lots of different umlauts. Who's done that? A little app called Duolingo. It's gamified. It's probably inspired by some of your gaming technology from IGT and Aristocrat, etc., right? Or Ainsworth, right? And it teaches them in a personalized manner based on their learning strengths and learning challenges. It does a path forward for them where the tutoring is deeply personalized to a psychographic of one. My oldest, Lucian, now knows how to spell smörgåsbord perfectly. It's smorgasbord in English. And it's one of only two words that are part of the English language inspired by Sweden. The other one is ombudsman. I love our cultural transgressions into the English language. But smörgåsbord in its original has like umlauts and stuff. He now spells it perfectly, not because of me, not because of my EQ, UQ, or CQ, but because I went a little bit of digital augmentation and he's learnt to write in Swedish because of the owl on Duolingo. And more recently, I'm going to wrap up with this story, our GP encouraged me as a single dad to start just improving just by 1% every day. He said, Anders, things are a bit different now. You're no longer with the boy's mother. You know, you can step into your own new role and do things a little bit differently. She goes, just 1% better every day. So I see Genevieve Muir once a quarter or once every 6 months. She's a great parenting coach. I didn't know this thing existed, but I'm very grateful for Genevieve's great work. Sometimes she says, Anders, if the boys ever play up, just start connecting before you're correcting. Get down on your knees, talk to them, level. I mean, I used to do this, right? She goes, just try a little different things. Connect before you correct, right? And then coach. And I go, yep, I'm humble enough to learn that. Now I try and do it. We also went back to our GP recently, and she said, Anders, you know, I think Lucian might have a little bit of pre-anxiety. And she goes, in Australia, there's a wait line, 9 months between a GP referral and you going to see a real human child psychologist. 9-month wait time. Is that good given the ABS or the Australian Bureau of Statistics research you just saw, 98%? No. So she goes, I'm going to prescribe you an app. I go, social media ban? No? No. She said, no. She said, digital content today, yes, it's somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in story. Can be good or can be bad. Can also be good. And she said, what stories is he into? And I said, well, maybe in a very age-inappropriate fashion, I've introduced my kids to Star Wars way too early, which might explain the pre-anxiety. But now, on the app she prescribed, digital content is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story. Now, Lucian and I sit down on the mental health app, the mindfulness app, Headspace, and at bedtime, we now do breath work with Yoda, which calms his body and equally my nervous system so we can get to the really good storytelling faster. In America, they treat war veterans with PTSD also with an app, because they know the apps and the digital content can boost people's serotonin levels and lower their cortisol levels. Why do I share this? Because your content, the stories, your future stories, the screens in your venues, the stories about your food, your hospitality, your hotels, your retirement villages, the impact on your clubs, when you start telling those stories digitally, it is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in story. This puts the onus and the responsibility back on all of us to start telling better stories that have a positive impact on people's lives and on our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, start preparing for a very, very different and unique future, because it's where you, your kids, your grandkids, and your communities are going to spend the rest of your lives. Thank you very much, and see you in that future. Thank you.
Wow, what an impressive bloke he is. I've seen some people talk about AI. He's the best I've seen. That's unbelievable. Anders, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Anders Sorman-Nilsson. Just brilliant. Before we wrap up for the day, just a little bit of housekeeping. The Punters Challenge will be starting in about 15 minutes at the yacht deck across the road at the old Fisherman's Wharf Hotel site. So if you'd like to watch the races and have a couple of beers, we'll be across the road. Yesterday in your welcome bag, you would have received an envelope for the Pest to Kill draw, which will be drawn at the dinner tonight. Please bring the chip along with you, or take a photo of it to be eligible. There's $1,000 up for grabs, so it's important for you to bring that chip or a photo of it for us, please. As far as the dinner goes tonight, 6:30 there'll be some pre-drinks in the Grand Ballroom foyer. The dinner itself will get underway at 7 o'clock, sponsored by Painter Dixon. Thank you to Painter Dixon for their continued support. The dinner entertainment, the Memphis Cowboys, they tell me they put on a terrific show. And for the rugby league fans in the room, we're all footy fans. England and the Kangaroos tonight. Kevy Walters' side looking to make it a clean sweep. In the Pearls Bar, straight after the dinner at 11:30, they're going to set up a big screen so we can watch the football in the early hours of the morning as well, wrapping up at about 2 a.m. So just where we need to go. Kick on and watch the football, you little beauty. And just on tomorrow, but when you're checking out in the morning, bring your bags along to reception and just let the concierge know. Then we can make our way down here for day 2 of the conference. We'll hear from Dave Trodden, Brian Canavan, the NRL. Also, a very special guest joining us tomorrow as well, which I'll tell you more about later on tonight. But that's a bit of the housekeeping. Thank you very much for your attendance this morning. We'll see you across the road for the punting challenge, and then again tonight for the conference. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of your day.